I never thought something as small as a dripping faucet could change my life. It was one of those quiet afternoons where time seems to stretch endlessly. The kind of afternoon where the sunlight doesn't just enter the room, it settles into it. The golden rays slip gently through the kitchen window, spreading across the worn linoleum floor like soft, patient fingers. Dust floated lazily in the air, illuminated like tiny, drifting stars. The house smelled faintly of lavender and old books, a scent I had grown used to, a scent that once brought comfort. But that day, something about it felt different. I didn't know it yet, but something inside me was about to shift. My name is Margaret. I am 72 years old, and for the past 10 years, I have lived alone. This house once felt full, not just with furniture or belongings, but with presence. My husband, Henry, was never a loud man. He didn't fill rooms with conversation, but somehow, he filled them anyway. Even now, years after he passed, there are moments when I still feel him here. In the creak of the stairs, in the way the evening light hits his favorite chair, in the silence, especially in the silence. Over time, my life became structured around that silence. My days followed a rhythm so predictable, it almost felt rehearsed. Morning tea by the window, dusting the mantelpiece, reading the same books I'd read a dozen times before. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't truly living either. I was existing, quietly, carefully, safely. That morning started like any other, until I heard it. Drip, drip, drip. A small sound, insignificant really, coming from beneath the kitchen sink. But in a house this quiet, even the smallest noise becomes impossible to ignore. At first, I tried to dismiss it. I tightened the tap. I placed a bowl beneath the pipe. Still. Drip, drip, drip. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It felt like a disruption. A crack in the fragile peace I had built around myself. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that cabinet, listening. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something unfamiliar. Helplessness. There was a time when Henry would have fixed it without a second thought. But Henry wasn't here anymore. And I wasn't as capable as I used to be. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the phone. I hesitated. Not because of the repair, but because calling someone meant letting someone in. Into my home. Into my space. Into my quiet. Still, I dialed the number. That he arrived just as my tea had begun to cool. The doorbell rang, firm, but not impatient. When I opened the door, I found a man standing there, toolbox in hand. He looked to be around my age. Perhaps a little younger. Late 60s maybe. There was something steady about him. Not just in the way he stood, but in the way he carried himself. Unhurried. Grounded. Present. His eyes were warm. A soft hazel that didn't dart around or rush past you. They stayed. He introduced himself simply. Elias. His voice was calm. Low. The kind of voice that didn't demand attention, but held it anyway. As he stepped inside, I noticed something unusual. He didn't walk in like it was just another job. He paused. Briefly. Looking at the framed photographs on the wall. Not staring. Not intruding. Just acknowledging. As if he understood that this wasn't just a house. It was a life. A history. A story. And somehow, that mattered to him. He got to work quickly. Kneeling beneath the sink. The soft clinking of tools echoed gently through the kitchen. I sat at the small table nearby, unsure of what to do with myself. The room suddenly felt smaller. Warmer. Occupied. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd shared space with someone like this. Not speaking. Not entertaining. Just existing together. His movements were precise. Practiced. Almost rhythmic. There was something strangely calming about watching him work. And yet, I became aware of something else. His presence. Not overwhelming, but undeniable. I stood up to make tea. Not because I needed it, but because I needed something to do. Something to steady myself. I smoothed the kitchen towels. Adjusted the cups. Watched the water pour, a little longer than necessary. All the while aware of him. Aware of the quiet companionship filling the room. When he finally finished, he sat back slightly, wiping his brow. I brought the tea over. He smiled. Simple. Genuine. And we began to talk. At first, just about the pipes, the age of the house, the stubborn joints that refused to cooperate. But slowly, the conversation shifted. He asked how long I had lived here. And without meaning to, I told him the truth. Not the polished version. Not the one I give strangers. The real one that I told him about Henry. Not the big things. Not the milestones. But the small details. The way he hummed while reading the paper. How he always left the last bit of jam for me. Elias didn't interrupt. Didn't offer empty comfort. He simply listened. And then quietly, he shared something of his own. His wife had passed away too. Just a year ago. There it was. That unspoken connection. Loss recognizing loss. Loneliness meeting loneliness. Not dramatically. Not loudly. But deeply. He said something then. Something simple. Fix the small leaks before they reach the foundation. And I felt it. He wasn't talking about the pipes. As he packed up his tools, the sky darkened. Rain began to fall. Heavy. Sudden. Almost like the world itself had paused around us. He glanced toward the window. Then back at me. Hesitation. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want him to leave. So I said it. Would you like to stay for some soup? It wasn't planned. It wasn't logical. But it felt necessary. He accepted. We sat at the table. The rain wrapped around the house like a protective barrier. Inside it felt warm. Safe. Time slowed. We spoke in soft tones. About simple things. Books. Seasons. Gardens. And in between the words, there was silence. But not the kind I feared. This silence was different. It wasn't empty. It was shared. Something changed in that kitchen. Something quiet. But powerful. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. When he stood to leave, he paused beside me. Then gently, he placed his hand over mine. Warm. Steady. Real. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't rushed. It was human. And in that moment, I felt seen. When he left, the house was quiet again. But not the same. The dripping had stopped. But something else had too. The emptiness. I stood at the sink. Ran the water. Smooth. Silent. Fixed. And yet, it wasn't just the pipe. Something inside me had been repaired too. Not completely. But enough. Enough to feel hope again. Sometimes, life doesn't break down our doors. It slips in quietly. Through the smallest cracks. And if we let it, it doesn't just fix what's broken. It reminds us that we're still alive.